We are back with Brian Kalinec. The album is The Beauty of It All, and you just heard Redwood Fence. Sort of take me through the progress you've seen, at the very least in terms of race relations in this country, from the time you were born up until, the last few years.
Certainly. I think we've obviously made a lot of progress. It's been hard-won progress, and so much of it happened when I was a young, when I was going from my child into my teens, because a lot of it, 1965 was sort of the that demarcation of when things changed because of the civil rights legislation. But so much had gone into it before then, from the 40s and the 50s into that. So I was sort of born into the change, but the change was there was a lot of resistance to that change, and it was the fence sort of represent the redwood fence represents that resistance, and we've really come a long way, but there's there are people who would like to see us uh, sort of go back to what they consider to be the good old days. But if it were if it were up to them, but I would say that if you just look at the past 50 years, which is about what we're talking about here, if you look at the past 50 years, that we really have made some great progress, and I think that uh, we have to just keep pushing forward, even though there are naysayers today. I mean, this white nationalism has always simmered below the surface, even through all of this, and I think that that's something that I've always suspected, but have been really disappointed to find out in our politics that it's still such a big force, and I don't really understand why.
I don't get it either. I'm white, but like I don't look at my skin and go, "Ooh, I should get some special treatment." It's I,
Yeah,
I look at my skin and go, "Okay."
and what your comments and say my daughter's comments mark that progress, is that my daughter went to school with kids of many different backgrounds and cultures and colors, and she doesn't see herself as special. But when I was a kid, that demarcation was there, and it wasn't just black versus white. There were religious differences. There's so many things that were brought up to divide us. I mean, if you go back and you look at just the immigration history of the U.S., there was a time when people from my country couldn't even get in, you know, based on restrictions. So, and I have a Czech background, so there were so many different restrictions all through our history, and even though in the Constitution and Declaration of Independence and all this, it was supposed to be a country of equals. And clearly, that was aspirational, because it was not that way at all, and there have always been those forces that have tried to really keep that from happening. And I think that's always been the uh, biggest sadness for me. I guess that's the way to put it.
So, other than getting rid of the white nationalism, Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump's strain of politics, what do you think the biggest pieces of progress we still need to make are?
Well, um, I think just the main thing is just recognizing that, excuse me, every human being has something to contribute, and you know, uh, just I'm not trying to get into the politics here. What I'm trying to say is that when you think of this as a zero sum existence, that's first of all, that's silly because if it was a zero sum existence, we'd all still be, you know, have horses and ox carts and that sort of thing. I mean, we've had uh, so much expansion of our knowledge and of our science and of our economy and of our populations, and that's not a zero sum existence. But certain people want you to believe that it is, or that we only have such a certain size of a pie, and that's the most ridiculous thing that you can imagine because really, the more people that we have bringing to bear their talents and their skills, regardless of who they are, um, to make this a better world, the better the world's going to be. And that's the one thing that I think uh, gets lost when those kind of zero sum arguments are made, because and I always go back to this. This is one of my favorite stories. Is that smallpox was a really big problem during the American Revolutionary War, and it was a slave who introduced the idea of sharing blood from somebody who had smallpox as an idea of a vaccination. That's where that came from. That came from a slave. And when I think about those kinds of contributions that are made by everyday people, uh, that's it's that summation of all of our knowledge and our working together with all of our knowledge and sharing the knowledge that moves us forward in a positive way.
So you mentioned in the song that kids make fast friends, basically, and
Huh?
and it's true. But I'm suspecting you're sort of getting at something where you might see some hope in the younger generation.
Yes, and that particular scene on the swing was an actual scene that happened. I mean, everything in that story actually happened. Um, in the whole song, and we had. Uh, it's not like we didn't know our neighbors in the back because we did, but we just didn't have real close contact with them. But one time, uh, Henry was his name. He was my age, and he came over, and we were swinging on our swing sets. So that was a really cool thing for me. But kids don't see the prejudices until that stuff is put into them by their surroundings, by people around them. My parents were not prejudiced, but society itself imposed all these restrictions, and I grew up still seeing signs that said male, female, or man, woman, and colored on bathrooms. I mean, I remember seeing that stuff, and so it's what we teach our kids that cause them to see these differences. It's not what they see themselves.
Yeah, I think millennials and Gen Z were taught pretty well in that regard.
Absolutely.
Uh, I'm somewhat hopeful for the future, but I'm also a little afraid of what this next generation is about to get taught.
Yeah, me too. It's pretty regressive is the best way to put it. And that's a nicest thing I can say about it.
Well, let's close things out on a slightly happier note. There are songs of appreciation on this album, especially the title track and another one I wish I could play, but the FCC limits me to 3 songs off an album in an hour-long show. It's called Fix It Man. I'll play it another day. But let's get another song of appreciation in here from another artist.
Okay. Well, uh, the best one that comes to me is sung by Louis Armstrong. It's a Wonderful World.
Oh, that's a classic. That is
It's a classic, and it's just if you ever need to brighten your day, just listen to what he does with that song. I mean, it's there's there's something actually there's magic in that, and that's what is incredible to me is that there is a real true magic in that song.
Brian Kalinec, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Trevor. It's been my pleasure.